Welcome to Yehoshua's Daf Yomi Shiur, where the Daf continues daily until the complete revelation of Mashiach ben David, Messiah the son of David. And we are studying Chullin Daf 107, Kuf Zion, today. And we're starting at the bottom, it's the middle of something. So the last line of 106b is, Rav says a person may wash both of his hands in the morning and stipulate with regard to them that he may eat on the basis of that washing throughout the entire day, provided he guards his hands from dirt and ritual impurity. It is likewise related that Rabbi Avina said to the inhabitants of, and now we're on Kuf Zion Amid Aleph, top of the page, 107a, top of the page, Patka di Aravot. Patka di Aravot kegona, tun de lo shchichid lechumaya, mishu yidaichu, mitzafar ve'asnu elayu, lechu leyoma. Ika di amri b'shas adchak in, shelo b'shas adchak la. Upligi rav ve'ika di amri afilu, shelo b'shas adchak nami hainu de rav. The valley of Aravot, the people of the valley of Aravot, where there was a shortage of water, people such as you, for whom water is scarce, should wash your hands in the morning and stipulate with regard to them for the entire day. Some say that Rabbi Avina maintains that in exigent circumstances, yes, one should act in this manner, but when one is not in exigent circumstances, he should not do so. And according to this explanation, Rabbi Avina disagrees with the opinion of Rav, who permitted this practice to all. And some say that Rabbi Avina ruled that one may do so even when not in exigent circumstances, and Rabbi Avina's opinion is identical to that of Rav. Amar Papa, Hai Arita, Didelai, Ein Noitlin Mimenu Liyadayim, Dilo Asu Mikoyach Gavro, Vi Mikrav Gavro, Dalvo, Tavla, Rav Papa said with regard to this irrigation channel, into which water is poured from a river using buckets, and which then transports the water to the fields, one may not wash his hands in it. The reason is that this water does not come from a person's force, meaning it is not poured on the hands by a direct act, as it moves by force of the current in the channel. But if one draws his hands near the bucket itself in such a manner that the water poured on his hands comes from a person's force before it begins to flow in the channel, then one may wash his hands with it. And if the bucket in which the water is drawn from the river is perforated with a hole large enough to enable liquid to enter the vessel, excuse me, the vessel, uno momento. Okay, where were we? Rav Papa said, with regard to this irrigation, into which water is poured from a river, I'm probably repeating it over again. Let's repeat this line over again. Amar Rav Papa, Hai Arita, Didelai, Enoit Men Yodaim, Duleas, Mikoyach Gavro, Rav Papa said with regard to this irrigation channel into which water is poured from a river using buckets, and which then transports the water to the fields, one may not wash his hands in it. The reason is that this water does not come from a person's force, meaning it's not poured on the hands by a direct act, as it moves by force of the current in the channel. But if one draws his hands near the bucket itself in such a manner that the water poured on his hands comes from a person's force before it begins to flow in the channel, then one may wash his hands with it. And if the bucket in which the water is drawn from the river is perforated with a hole large enough to enable liquid to enter the vessel when it is placed in the river, the presence of this hole connects the water in the channel to the water in the river as they touch through that hole, and therefore one may immerse his hands in that channel as he would in the river itself. Yet the perforated bucket is invalid for the washing of the hands by pouring, since it is no longer considered a vessel. As Rava says, with regard to a vessel that is perforated with a hole large enough to enable liquid to enter, one may not wash his hands with it. Ve'amar Rava kli she'ein boi revi'is ein noitel mimenu liyadayim eini. Ve'amar Rava kli she'ein machzik revi'is ein noitel mimenu yadayim ve'hamachzik afal gav deles bei. And Rava says, with regard to a vessel that does not have a quarter log of water in it, one may not wash his hands with it. The Gemara asks, is that so? But doesn't Rava say, with regard to a vessel that cannot contain a quarter log of water, one may not wash his hands with it? It may be consequently inferred that as long as the vessel can contain a quarter log, one may use it even if it does not currently have a quarter log in it. Loi kashya hol echad hol etrei detanya miravis noitlin yadayim leechad ve'afilu lishnayim. The Gemara answers, this is not difficult. This former statement requiring a quarter log of actual water is referring to washing for one person, whereas that latter statement requiring only that the vessel have a capacity of a quarter log is referring to washing for two people. If a vessel originally contained a quarter log of water, then even if less than that amount remains after one person has washed his hands, a second individual may use the remainder, which is considered fit based on the water's original volume, as it is taught in a Braita. With a quarter log of water, one may wash the hands of one individual and even those of two. Amar le Rav Sheshes le Ameimar tapeditu amana amar le in achazuta amar le in ashiura amar le in. Rav Sheshet said to Ameimar, are you particular about the vessel used for washing hands, that it be wholly intact? Ameimar said to him, yes. Rav Sheshet further inquired, are you also particular about the appearance of the water, that it be normal? Ameimar said to him, yes. Rav Sheshet further asked, are you particular about the measure of water, that it be no less than 1/4 log? Ameimar said to him, yes. Ike de amri hachi amar le amana v'achuzata kap dinan ashiura lo kap dinan ditanya. Some say that this is what Ameimar said to him. We are particular about the wholeness of the vessel and about the water's appearance, but we are not particular about the water's measure, as it is taught in a Braita. With a quarter log of water, one may wash the hands of one individual and even those of two. The Braita indicates that there is no need for a quarter log for each individual. Velohi shani hasam mishum dekasu mishiori tairo. The Gemara notes, and it is not so, meaning one cannot derive from the Braita that the measure of water is immaterial. It is different there because there the water comes from the remainder of a measure initially sufficient for purity. If there was not initially a quarter log, the water is unfit even for one person. Atkin Rav Yaakov minal bekod not labat Raviata atkin Ravashi berutzal kuzabat Ravieta. The Gemara relates that Rav Yaakov from the Harpa Code prepared a glass vessel that could contain a quarter log of water for washing his hands. Rav Ashi in Chuzal likewise prepared an earthenware vessel that could contain a quarter log. Yomerova migufas chovis shetikno noiklin mimenu liodayim. Tanya nami hochi migufas chovis shetikno noiklin mimenu liodayim chemas uchefisha shetiknan noiklin mehem liodayim sag vekufa afal pi shemekablim ein noiklin mehem liodayim. And Rabbah says, if one prepared the stopper of a barrel for use as a vessel by hollowing it out until it contained a quarter log, one may wash his hands with it, even though it was not originally designated for this function. This ruling is also taught in Braita. If one prepared the stopper of a barrel for this purpose, one may wash his hands with it. Likewise, with regard to a hemet and a kefisha, types of leather wineskins that one prepared for this purpose, one may wash his hands with them, as they were initially designed to hold liquids. But with regard to a sack and a basket, even if they can contain water, one may not wash his hands with them, as no sack or basket is designed to hold water, and most cannot. A dilemma was raised before the sages. What is the halacha with regard to eating with a cloth, with regard to eating with a cloth on one's hands, rather than washing them to purify them? Are we concerned that perhaps he will touch the food with his hands or not? Tashima uchshinos leloy Rabbi Tzadok oichel pachos mikebeitza noit lebimapa oichel chutz lasuka. The Gemara suggests coming here proof from a Mishnah in Sukkah 26b. And when they gave Rabbi Tzadok on the festival of Sukkot less than an egg bulk of food, he took the food in a cloth and he ate it outside the Sukkah. As he held that one is not obligated to eat food of this amount in a Sukkah, and he did not recite a blessing after eating it, since less than an egg bulk does not satisfy the verse, and you shall be satisfied and bless the Lord your God. Deuteronomy 8:10. What, is it not to be inferred that consequently if one eats an egg bulk, it requires washing of hands, even if one uses a cloth? Dilma. The Gemara rejects this. Perhaps one can conclude from that Mishnah only that consequently if one eats an egg bulk, he needs to do so in a sukkah and needs to recite a blessing after eating, but he can still use a cloth instead of washing his hands. Tashima Shmuel ashkachei l'Rav dekochil b'mapo. Omar le, the Gemara suggests coming here a proof from an incident where Shmuel found Rav eating with the cloth rather than washing his hands, and Shmuel said to him. Now we turn to 107b, top of the page. The gematria of 107 is the Messiah, and in English gematria, it's also gematria of the word atonement in English gematria. 107 is equal to the Messiah, and it also equals the word atonement. It also equals the word quantum. So I think what I'm going to be doing is, going forward, I'll be doing Yehoshua's gematria time Daf Yomi Shiur, but I won't be calling it Yehoshua's gematria time Daf Yomi Shiur because it's like an algorithm issue. So I'll be, God willing, be continuing the gematrias, but just it's still called Yehoshua's Daf Yomi Shiur. So we're continuing on to 107b. And Avdinan Kedain Amarle Dati Ketzoralai. Do we act in this manner? Rav said to Shmuel, I did wash my hands, but as I am delicate, I do not wash to hold food in my bare hands, therefore I covered them with a cloth. He saw like Rabbi Zera, Ashkachinu Rabbi Ami Rabbi Asi Nigachnu Bimlai Chamosos Amar Tre Gavri Rav Rebbe Kavasaichu Lito Kedrav Ushmuel Ha Daiti Kitsoa Komal. The Gemara further relates when Rabbi Zera left Babylonia for Eretz Yisrael, he found Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi eating bread while covering their hands with worn pieces of wineskins rather than washing them. Rabbi Zera said to them, "Could two great men such as yourselves err with regard to the incident of Rav and Shmuel related above? After all, Rav said to Shmuel, I am using a cloth because I am delicate. He did wash his hands beforehand. Ishdemitite. That's a tough one. Ishdemitite. Ishdemitite means it escaped. Ishdemitite ha de amarav tachlifa baravimi amashmuel. Hintiru ma'baloich leitruma veloitiru ma'baloich leitairois. The house. Amar Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi, Kohanim Hav. The Gemara notes, it escaped Rabbi Zera's mind that Rabbi Tachlifa bar Avimi said, that Shmuel said, the sages permitted the consumption of bread while the hands are wrapped in both a cloth rather than washed, specifically to priests who partake of truma, as they are careful not to touch the bread with their hands. But they did not permit the use of a cloth in this manner to non-priests, even those who are particular to eat non-sacred food in a state of ritual purity, as they do not maintain the same level of diligence as priests. And since Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi were priests, it was permitted for them to eat with a cloth. Oilo Toshima de Rav Huna bar Sechoira Havikoi Kamid Rav Hamnuna. When I attended the Shiur of Rabbi Yehoshua Cohen, he talked about Rabbi Hamnuna. Yeah. But the very first thing I asked him was concerning Rav Shimon HaTimni. That's what it was. And he pulled it as Gemara Beitza, and he took, and it was 21, either A or B, I don't remember, and he talked about Shimon HaTimni. That was our first interaction with Rabbi Yehoshua Cohen and Chushel Chesed over 4 years ago. Okay, all this came from Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna, Balam le Savi Ochid Omar le Ilav de Rav Hamnuna at Lo Safina Lach. A dilemma was raised before the sages. If one eats by means of another feeding him, without himself touching the food, does he need to wash his hands before eating or not? The Gemara suggests coming in here proof from the following incident where Rav Huna bar Sechora was standing before Rav Hamnuna and serving him. Rav Huna bar Sechora cut a slice of meat for Rav Hamnuna and placed it in his mouth, and he ate it. Rav Huna bar Sechora said to Rav Hamnuna, "Were you not Rav Hamnuna, I would not feed you in this fashion." My time, lav mishum nizayin v'lo inogam, lo nizayin is kadim umasheyadeh mikoro. The Gemara infers from this episode, what is the reason that it was permitted for Rav Hamnuna to eat in such a manner? Is it not because he was careful not to touch the food he ate with his hands? This indicates that someone may be fed even without washing his hands. The Gemara rejects this. No, one can say that he was vigilant and went ahead and washed his hands at the outset. Tashma adam Rav Zera marav lo yitin adam prusa letoich piv shel shamash ela im ken yoidem boy shinot al yodo ve'ashamosh mivorech al kois v'chois. ואינו מבורך על כל פרוסה וביוחנן אומר מבורך על כל פרוסה ופרוסה. The Gemara suggests coming here a proof from that which Rabbi Zera said, that Rav said, a person may not place a slice of bread into the mouth of the attendant serving at a meal unless he knows that he has washed his hands. And it was also stated that the attendant recites a blessing over each and every cup of wine presented to him at a meal. This is because he never knows if he will receive another cup, and he cannot intend that his initial blessing apply to a cup he does not know he will receive, but he does not recite a blessing over each and every slice of bread given to him. Rabbi Yochanan says that he must recite a blessing over each and every slice he receives. Amar Papa Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan loy kashya deha deika adam chashuv hadelek adam chashuv. Papa said, granted, the apparent contradiction between the opinions of Rav and Rabbi Yochanan is not difficult. One can resolve it by saying that this is a statement of Rav, that the attendant need not recite a blessing for every slice of bread, and is referring to a case where there is an important person at the meal, since the attendant is confident that the important person will ensure the attendant receives enough to eat. His initial blessing applies to each slice he receives, and that statement of Rabbi Yochanan is referring to a meal where there is no important person. Since the attendant is not confident that he will receive another slice, he must receive a new blessing whenever he does not receive one. Mikol makom hak'amar el im kein yodesh not yodo shani shamashti tarid. In any case, Rav first says that one should not place a slice into the attendant's mouth unless he knows that he has washed his hands. This indicates that one who is fed by another must wash his hands. The Gemara responds, the case of an attendant is different, as he is occupied with his duties and may touch the food inadvertently. Therefore, he specifically may not eat without washing his hands. Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in the Brisa, Lo yitin adam chusa leshamash bein b'hakois b'yodoi bein shakois b'yodoi shel bal habayis. Excuse me, I'm going to restart that again momentarily. Alright, let's go back to the top of that Brisa. Alright, Tan Rabbanan, Lo yitin adam chusa leshamash bein b'hakois b'yodoi bein b'hakois b'yodoi shel bal habayis. Shemi yerabon yidom kal gol v'sudom mishlo yidon yodom v'sudom tem chusa l'toy piv. The sages taught in Brisa, a person who is a guest may not give a slice of bread from the meal in front of him to the attendant serving, whether a cup is in the attendant's hand or a cup is in the host's hand. Lest a mishap occur at the meal. The host might become angry or distracted by the concern that there will not remain enough food for his guests, and the cup will fall from his hand. If the cup is in the attendant's hand, he might drop it while accepting the food from the guest. And with regard to an attendant who has not washed his hands, it is prohibited to place a slice of bread into his mouth. A dilemma was raised before the sages. Does one who feeds another need to wash his hands, since his hands are touching the food? Or perhaps he does not need to wash his hands, as he himself is not eating. Toshima, Tony Rav Menashe, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Ish mediches yada chas b'mayim, v'nosenes pas livna, koton amar olov al shamay azokin, shelo yotzalach l'miyodo yachas v'gam gazu alav sheyachim l'shtei yadav. The Gemara suggests coming here a resolution to the dilemma from that which the school of Menashe taught. That Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says a woman may rinse her one hand in water on Yom Kippur so that she does not touch the food before she has washed her hands in the morning, and give bread to her minor son without concern about violating the prohibition against bathing on Yom Kippur. They said about Shammai the elder that he did not want to feed his children even with one hand on Yom Kippur to avoid having to wash it. But due to concerns about health and well-being of his children, they decreed that he must feed them with two hands, forcing him to wash both. Apparently, one who feeds another must wash his hands, even though he himself is not eating. Amar Abaye, Hasna Mishum Shivta. Abaye said the reason for the washing there is on account of the food specifically. Abaye said the reason for the washing there is not on account of the food specifically. Rather, it is due to an evil spirit named Shivta, who contaminates hands that have not been washed in the morning. As long as one washes hands in the morning, perhaps he need not wash them again to feed another. Toshima Davud Shmuel Ashkechel Shmuel Dikabechi Amale Amai Kobechit Dimachyan Rabai Amai Damale Kosav Bizli Brai Bilo Mishes Yadaich The Gemara further suggests, coming here, a resolution to the dilemma from the following incident. As Shmuel's father found the young Shmuel crying and said to him, "Why are you crying?" Shmuel replied, "Because my teacher struck me." His father asked, "Why did he strike you?" Shmuel responded, "My teacher said to me, 'You are feeding my son, but you did not wash your hands.'" His father asked, "Why did you not wash your hands?" Shmuel said to him, "Only he, the teacher's son, is eating, and I must wash my hands." Amar lei Eloi misaseh de lo gemir bimchad nami mechivel chasay chel machmas machil tzarchen tilas yadayim machil ein tzarchen tilas yadayim. Shmuel's father said to him, "Is it not enough that your teacher did not learn the halacha properly, that he even strikes you on account of his error? One who feeds another need not wash his hands if he himself is not eating." The Gemara concludes, and the halacha is that one who eats by means of another feeding him needs to wash his hands, even though he does not touch the food. But one who feeds another does not need to wash his hands. That concludes the Talmud. For that, we start a new Mishnah. A new Mishnah Torah. A new Mishnah. Let's go. mit פחז אחס ובלבד שלא יהיו ניגעים זה בזה ולשם בגלי ואומר שני אכסונוי לא יכולים לשור אחד זה בשר וזה גבינה אין חושין. A person may bind meat and cheese in one hand provided that they do not come into contact with another. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that two unacquainted guests may eat together at one table, this one eating meat and this one eating cheese, and they need not be concerned lest they come to violate the prohibition of eating meat and milk by partaking of the food of another. That's the Mishnah. Now for the Talmud. My Havi. The Mishnah teaches that one may bind meat and cheese together in one cloth, provided that they do not come into contact with each other. The Gemara asks, and if they come into contact with each other, what of it? It is a case of one. It is a case of one cold food in contact with another cold food, and they would not absorb substances from one another. Rabbi said, granted that cold foods do not require the peeling of the place where they came into contact, as they do not absorb substances from one another. Nevertheless, don't they require rinsing of water? The sages therefore decreed against the contact of even cold meat and cheese, lest one come to eat them without rinsing them first. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer Shaniach Ach Sanayin Ochlin al Shulchan V'chule Amar Rav Chanan Barami Amar Shmuel Oshanu El Hashem Machkin Zeh Avamakin Zeh Asu. The Mishnah teaches that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says two guests may eat together on one table. This one is eating meat and that one eating cheese. Rav Chanan Barami says that Shmuel says they taught this halacha only in a case where the guests do not know each other, as they will not eat of each other's food, but in a situation where they know each other, it is prohibited for them to eat together on the same table. Tanya Nami Hachi, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Shnei Ach Senoim Shenis, Orchu Lipundag Echad Ze Ba Min HaTzafon Veze Ba Min HaDarom, Ze Ba Bechatichato Veze Ba Begevinato. The opinion is also taught in Bright. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says if two guests roomed in, one in, this one coming from the north, this one coming from the south, this one coming with his piece of meat, and that one coming with his cheese, they may eat together on one table, this one eating meat and that one eating cheese, and they need not be concerned with Osru Ela B'Tvisa Achas. So Kedaitach Ela Kein Tvisa Achas. The Bright adds, and the sages prohibited this practice only if they both eat from one parcel. The Gemara adds, can it enter your mind that the Bright is actually referring to a case where they eat from one parcel? This is obviously prohibited. Rather, it prohibits eating even in a manner as though they were eating from one parcel, meaning when the diners are somewhat acquainted with each other, since neither would mind if the other ate from his food. Amar le Rav Yemar bar Shlemya le Abaye Shnei Achin umakpidin ze mahu. It was stated above that if two diners are acquainted with each other, they may not eat meat and cheese on the same table. Rav Yemar Bar Shlemya said to Abaye, if these diners are two brothers, but they are each particular not to let each another one eat of his food, what is the halacha? May they eat separate dishes of meat and cheese at a single table? Amar le yamru kol asrikin asurin usrigi baitus mutorin. Abaye said to him, your question evokes that of Baitus ben Zunin. The sages prohibited the baking of elaborately decorated Syrian cakes for Passover, lest people tarry in their preparation and the cakes become leavened. Baitus wished to prepare the cakes in a way that would not lead to a violation of any prohibition, yet the sages prohibited it. But because the people will say all the decorated Syrian cakes are forbidden, but the Syrian cakes of Baitus are permitted, here too, to avoid confusion, we will not allow exceptions to the rule. Uletamayich. Hadamar Basim of Yochanan Mishain Loyelach Haluge Hod Muto Lechabso Bicholoy Shil Moyed Bichuloy Shil Moyed Yoimru. Rabbi Yemar responded, but according to your reasoning, one may refute that which Rabbi Asi said, that Rabbi Yochanan said, although the sages prohibited laundering on the intermediate days of a festival, one who has only one shirt is permitted to launder it on the intermediate days of a festival. Here too one can claim. People will say metaphorically,